Welcome to the deep dive. So you're tuning in today, and maybe you're dealing with something really tough, like your father or another parent screaming at you.
Mhm.
And maybe you're feeling this need for space, possibly even thinking about moving out. If that sounds familiar, just know that's a really, really common reaction.
It absolutely is, and it's really important to understand the impact that has. Being screamed at, especially by a parent, it's not just words.
Right.
Your body kind of goes into alert mode. It sees it as a threat, that
Yeah.
verbal aggression. It sets off this primal stress response.
Primal, yeah.
Yeah, think cortisol, adrenaline, that whole fight or flight thing kicks in.
And when that happens again and again.
Well, that's the problem. It's not just temporary stress then.
Hmm.
Sadly, it can build up and contribute to things like ongoing anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
even for some people, symptoms that look a lot like PTSD,
Yeah.
that constant state of high alert.
Hypervigilance, you mean?
Exactly. Hypervigilance. It's like your system never really gets to stand down.
There's a real biological cost. It makes me think of this student, Emma. She talked about always having this knot in her stomach,
Yeah.
especially waiting for her dad to get home. Sometimes she'd even pretend to be asleep just to avoid him possibly yelling. That constant waiting for the other shoe to drop,
Yeah.
it's exhausting.
So exhausting. But here's something interesting, perspective-wise. While you're feeling all that distress, which is totally real,
Mm.
the screaming itself, often it's less about you than you might think.
What do you mean?
It frequently comes from the parents' own stuff. Their unresolved issues, maybe stress from work, money worries, maybe just how they were raised.
Patterns repeating.
Exactly. Or maybe they just haven't learned healthy ways to deal with their own big emotions. Or perhaps there are underlying mental health struggles that come out as anger.
That shift, realizing it might not be about you, even if it's directed at you, that can be huge. It doesn't excuse it, obviously.
Not at all. It doesn't excuse the behavior.
But it helps understand. I remember reading about Michael. His dad was always yelling about grades. Michael felt, I'm not good enough.
A common takeaway, unfortunately.
Right. But it turned out the dad's anxiety was rooted in his own past, his fear of poverty, wanting Michael to have a secure future.
So the yelling came from fear, not lack of love, though it felt like rejection.
Exactly. Understanding that didn't stop the yelling being hurtful, but it reframed it for Michael. It wasn't a judgment on his core worth.
Precisely. Which kind of brings us to our goal for this deep dive,
Yeah.
right? We want to give you some insights, some practical steps you can actually use to navigate this. We'll look at short-term stuff for while you're still at home,
Okay.
and then really dig into what to consider if moving out feels like the right path for you.
Okay, great. So we know the impact. We've touched on the why behind the parent's behavior. Let's talk short term. If you're living at home, tensions flare up.
Yeah.
What can you do right then and there?
Well, first off, having a safe space is really, really key.
A physical space, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Your bedroom, maybe a quiet corner somewhere else in the house, or even somewhere outside the home altogether, a library, a trusted friend's place, somewhere you can actually go to retreat when things start getting loud.
Like an escape hatch.
Kind of, yeah. It gives you a little bit of control back, some physical distance from the immediate conflict zone.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about in the moment? The yelling starts, you feel that panic rising. Is there anything immediate?
Yes, definitely. Your breath is always with you, right?
Mm.
Deep breathing is incredibly powerful. There's a simple technique, the 4-2-6 method.
Okay, how does that work?
You just breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, hold it gently for 2, then breathe out slowly through your mouth for 6.
So the exhale is longer.
That's the key. That longer exhale helps activate your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your body's rest and digest system. It literally pushes back against the stress hormones.
A practical tool right there. Okay, so you've got a physical escape route, a breathing technique. What about the mental side? Protecting your self-esteem when someone's tearing you down.
That's where cognitive reframing comes in. It sounds technical, but it's basically about consciously changing how you talk to yourself about the situation.
Okay.
So instead of automatically thinking I'm worthless or he hates me when the yelling starts,
Yeah.
you try to intentionally shift that thought.
Like what? What would you shift it to?
Maybe something like, okay, dad's really struggling with something right now, or his reaction feels like it's about his own stress, not about me. You're not excusing it, but you're separating his behavior from your worth.
Creating a mental buffer.
Exactly. It helps stop those negative messages from sinking in so deep.
That feels important. It's recognizing the source isn't necessarily you, even if you're the target. What else helps? It must feel incredibly isolating.
Oh, absolutely. Which is why building a support network is just crucial.
Friends,
Yeah.
family.
Trusted friends, yeah. Maybe other family members who get it.
Love
Even online communities sometimes. You need people who can validate what you're going through.
validation. That feels key.
It really is. I remember Sarah, a client, she had this small group of friends. They even had a code word.
A code word.
Yeah, something she could text when things got really bad at home, meaning I need help now, maybe just to talk, or sometimes even crash somewhere else for a night.
Wow.
She said just knowing they believed her, that they didn't think she was exaggerating, it made a huge difference. Because sometimes you start doubting yourself.
Totally. It anchors you back to reality.
Yeah. Okay, so support is vital. What about actually talking to the parent about the screaming? Is that, like, ever a good idea while you're still there?
It can be. Honest communication is important, ideally, but you have to be really strategic.
How so?
Timing is everything. Don't try it mid-argument. Find a calm moment, a neutral time,
Yeah.
and use I statements.
Right, not accusations. Exactly, not you always scream, but more like, when there's yelling, I feel really scared and small. Focus on your feeling, your experience.
And if talking face-to-face feels impossible, or just leads to more yelling.
Writing a letter can sometimes be a good alternative. It lets you organize your thoughts, say what you need to say without interruption or immediate escalation. But manage your expectations too. Change might not happen quickly or at all, just from one conversation or letter.
Right. Realistic expectations. Okay, so those are some really useful short-term tools. Let's shift gears now. The bigger question, moving out. That's a huge step. Where do you even start thinking about that?
Yeah, it is huge. And the absolute number one thing is preparation. Thorough preparation.
Don't just run out the door one day.
Exactly. This isn't something to leap into without serious planning.
Yeah.
Careful prep makes the difference between a really stressful mess and a smoother transition.
Okay, so what does thorough preparation look like? Break it down.
First up, money. You need a super detailed budget. Everything. Rent, obviously. Utilities, electricity, water, gas, internet, food, transportation, car payments, insurance, gas or bus fare, phone bill, personal stuff, even a little bit for emergencies or unexpected things. Get granular.
Okay, know exactly what it costs to live. Then what?
Then you need a cushion. Savings. Ideally, aim for enough to cover 3 to 6 months of all those expenses you just listed.
3 to 6 months. Wow.
It sounds like a lot, I know. But that safety net is critical. What if you lose your job or have a big unexpected bill? That cushion keeps you afloat while you sort things out. It buys you time and reduces panic.
Makes sense. Financial security is huge for peace of mind. What else besides money?
Life skills. Seriously. Can you cook basic, healthy, affordable meals? Do you know how to clean properly, do laundry, manage your time so you're not constantly overwhelmed?
The practical stuff of running a household.
Yep. Think about housing options. Can you afford a place on your own right away? Maybe not. Sharing with roommates is often a really good way to cut costs significantly, especially when you're just starting out.
So budget, savings cushion, life skills, housing options. It's a lot to juggle.
It is. But taking it step by step makes it manageable. I remember this guy, Alex. He was in a really tough situation at home.
Yeah.
He spent nearly 2 years planning his move. 2 years.
Wow, dedication.
Totally. He worked extra hours, saved like crazy, but also he actively learned stuff. How to cook beyond instant noodles, basic budgeting, even some simple home repairs from YouTube.
Smart.
Yeah. And when he felt ready, financially and skills-wise, he found a small apartment, maybe a half-hour drive from his parents.
So not cutting ties completely, but creating distance.
Exactly. Enough distance to set boundaries and protect his mental health, but close enough to maintain some kind of relationship on his terms. He always said that long planning period was absolutely key to feeling confident, not just terrified, when he moved.
That's a really powerful example. It's not just about escaping, it's about building something positive. Okay, so we've got the practical planning, but deciding whether to move, that's still a huge emotional thing, right?
Oh, incredibly complex and so personal. There's no single right answer. It depends on so many things specific to your situation.
Like what?
Like how bad is the screaming? How often? How much is it genuinely impacting your mental health day to day? What's your financial reality right now? Do you have that support network we talked about? Your age, legal status.
Right.
And also honestly assessing, is there any potential for things to improve at home? maybe with communication, maybe with help. It's a weighing of all these
It
factors.
sounds like a real balancing act. No easy formula, but are there situations where it stops being a choice and becomes more necessary?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is critical. If the screaming crosses the line into severe emotional abuse, or there's any physical abuse happening,
Okay.
then your safety has to be the #1 priority, full stop. In those cases, moving out isn't just about well-being, it's about safety. And you need to reach out for help immediately.
Who do you reach out to?
Local domestic violence resources, shelters, if you're a minor, child protective services.
Mhm.
Don't try to handle that level of danger alone. Safety first, always.
That's a really vital point. Safety overrides everything else. Okay, so whether someone stays and works on things or plans to move, you mentioned professional support earlier. Can we talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. Seeking professional help like therapy can be incredibly beneficial regardless of the path you choose.
Individual therapy.
Individual therapy can give you tools to process all those difficult emotions, the hurt, the anger, the fear. It helps build coping strategies and emotional resilience. It's a space just for you to understand and heal.
And what about involving the family?
Sometimes, family therapy can be an option if everyone is willing, especially the parent doing the yelling. It can potentially improve communication, help everyone understand the dynamics, and ideally, establish healthier ways of interacting.
A neutral space with a guide?
Exactly. A therapist can facilitate conversations that might be impossible to have otherwise. But again, it requires some willingness from everyone involved.
Right, it's not a magic wand. Okay, this has been incredibly helpful breaking down such a tough situation. As we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things you really want someone listening to take away?
Okay, well, first and foremost, please hear this. Your feelings are valid. The hurt, the anger, wanting to escape, those are normal, understandable reactions to being in a threatening situation. You're not wrong for feeling that way.
That validation, again, so important.
It really is. You deserve respect. You deserve emotional safety. And whether you decide to stay and try to change the dynamic or you decide moving out is best for you,
Right.
taking any step to address this situation, that's an act of self-care. That's you valuing yourself.
It's about reclaiming some agency, some control.
Precisely. It connects back to something Carl Rogers, the psychologist, said.
Oh, yeah.
He talked about this curious paradox. When I accept myself just as I am, then I can change.
Acceptance is the first step to change.
Kind of. It means starting by accepting your feelings. The hurt, the anger, the confusion as real and legitimate. That self-acceptance gives you the foundation, the strength to figure out what comes next.
That's a really profound thought.
And remember, you can build a peaceful life. Maybe that involves improving things at home. Maybe it means creating your own peaceful space elsewhere. Your worth isn't defined by someone else's anger. You define your worth.
That's a really powerful and hopeful message to end on.
I hope so.
So just to quickly recap our deep dive, we've talked about how your feelings are totally valid and that you do have options. There are strategies for coping while at home and a whole planning process if you're considering independence.
Exactly. And maybe just one final question for you to think about after listening to all this.
Okay.
What is one small step, maybe even a tiny one, that you could take today? Just one thing to prioritize your own emotional well-being in the middle of this.
One small step today. That's a great takeaway question. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all these insights. And thank you for tuning in and engaging with this deep dive. We know this is a difficult topic, and we really hope this conversation has offered some clarity and maybe a path forward.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.